If you were the main character in a movie of your life, what would the audience be screaming at you to do right now?
Tim Cook, how did you guys meet? And then how does it develop where it now has been a friend and mentor?
Someone comes up to me and is like, that's Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple. And I guessed his email address.
Chasing an enormous amount of wealth in a short amount of time. Is it possible to do that and not wreck your personal life?
Yeah, this is a hot take.
Meet Sahil Bloom, a 34-year-old Millionaire, investor, and entrepreneur whose content has inspired millions to grow personally and professionally. As a former Stanford pitcher turned venture capitalist, he believes the greatest competitive advantage out there is a willingness to outwork and outlearn everyone else.
I think it's possible to make a whole lot of money and build a life that you love while doing it. But I think it requires...
Welcome to Front Row Seat. I'm your host, Ken Coleman. This show is about conversations that are designed to help you get better, level up, and lead well. Now, the people in this room, they're a representation of you, wherever you're watching or listening. And in this room, anyone has the power to join the conversation, ask a question, and then we're going to see where the answers take us. If you enjoy this episode, please make sure to let us know by liking and subscribing. I'm so excited. Our guest today is an investor, an entrepreneur, a millionaire. He's a former athlete, and I think he's just an insatiable learner, which is why I wanted to talk with him. Everybody, please help me welcome our guest, Sahil Bloom. Welcome, man. Thanks for coming. Oh, I'm so excited. We had lunch together, and we were already starting to fire away to the point where our producer said, "Hey guys, save it for the show." And so when I first discovered you, it was actually on Twitter, which is now X. I still want to call it Twitter. I'm never going to stop calling it Twitter.
Old-fashioned guys.
Thank you very much. And I just was struck by the depth and the seriousness of the content. In other words, what you were putting out, it was obvious to me when I would read it in Twitter form. This is thoughtful stuff. He's thinking about this. You only have so many, characters you can use. And so I followed you because I thought every time I read something that you put out, I said, that made me think and it made me feel. And that's why you're here today. But I got to ask before we dive into some stuff, what drives that insatiable desire to learn? Where does that come from for you?
Let's see. I come from a very academically oriented family. Mixed race background. My mother grew up, born and raised in India, but her father was a very well-known professor, chemist, my grandfather. And then my dad is a professor at Harvard, also very academically oriented, obviously. And so I felt like growing up, a lot of how we measured success in our household was academic achievement and sort of learning and growth oriented. And I'm very fortunate for the fact that I felt like that idea of having a growth mindset and embracing curiosity and going down rabbit holes was something that my parents really fostered in both my sister and I. I mean, I always remember like formative experiences, having some little question in mind, and my dad sitting down with me and actually like helping me go down that rabbit hole and sort of showing me how he would think about exploring and learning those things. Nowadays, you have Google, you have AI tools, you have all these things. Back then, it was much more manual doing that. And so it's like, there's those commercials of like the dad working with the kid to explore the different topics. I felt like my dad really did that with me. And when those type of behaviors are reinforced when you're young, I think it just becomes something that is a part of you as you continue to get older. So I was very, very fortunate for that because I felt like that learning culture was just part of the DNA of how we operated.
You said the word curiosity, so I want to stay here for a moment because you've talked a lot about this. I've seen posts on this. I mean, and you and I, we share this. I just think that we as a culture, we've gotten away from the digging, the asking questions, because we have so much information at our fingertips. I mean, AI's making it even more ridiculously easy to find information, but there's a difference between gathering information and digging into information. You're smiling. What do you think?
Yeah, there is. I think of it as like the gap between information and action for people. And one thing you find when you spend time around highly successful people is they have a razor thin gap between when they gather information and when they actually act on that information. And that action could be going further down the rabbit hole, really digging into the thing, doing the like hard, unscalable action to go deeper on that topic. Most people have an enormous gap between the two. And it's probably the biggest impediment to changing your life is that you are getting all of your dopamine from the information gathering
that's right.
and none from the action. And so like someone will go and watch an 8-hour Lex Fridman podcast with Elon Musk and feel very smart for all of the big words that they just learned. But what action did you actually go take? Or you will read a book, including my book, and not actually take an action against that. And so I think if there's one thing that you can do that actually changes your life, it is figure out the tiny action that you can take on the information that you just gathered. Because if you do the one small thing, what you realize is that momentum is the most powerful force in the world. And the one tiny little action, however imperfect it was, creates that little bit of momentum that starts to convince you that you can actually create change over a long period.
I agree with you. And I think that's a very insightful observation, that sliver, that small gap between I learned something and now I'm immediately trying is a key word here. We'll see if it works. Let's kick the tires on this. But I want to dive into your thoughts here on this. I think that gap, I believe you're right. So most people, so you've got great producers, people that are high achievers, small gap, okay? The rest of the world, big gap. And I believe it's because of fear and doubt. And I'm going to throw pride in there too. So we can beat this around. What I mean by fear is they're afraid to try something, to do something, because something bad might happen. Doubt is, that works for Lex, or that works for Huberman, that works for Sahil, but it's not going to work for me. There's something special about them. That's the doubt. They don't believe something can happen. And then there's the pride factor, which is, I may be worried about what someone's going to say if I make some change in my life, even if it's small. What are my friends going to say? What will my parents say? I think that those are three big blockers to action. Thoughts on that? Add to, edit. Why do great people have such a small sliver?
Yeah, I think that for a lot of people, myself included, this has been a huge impediment to me in the past. As recently as a few months ago, I constantly wrestle with it, which is sometimes you avoid giving 100% effort because you're afraid of what will happen if you do give 100% and still fail.
Right.
And it's a self-protection mechanism. You're protecting your ego. You're protecting the identity that you hold for yourself. But it becomes self-rejection in the sense that you are not putting yourself out there to the point where you can actually experience the growth on the other side of it. And I think that is an impediment to a whole lot of action for people. It's this constant feeling of like, okay, I need to protect my own perspective on who I am and that I am a high achiever or that I am capable of doing these things. So I'm not going to take on the thing that might call that into question. The last one that you said is something that I think about a lot, that idea of sort of pride or like even just the fear of judgment.
Yes.
And it's a quite well-known psychological phenomenon, the spotlight effect. It's this idea that we overestimate the degree to which other people are noticing or observing our actions or behaviors. It's kind of ironic to talk about the spotlight effect while we are quite literally under a spotlight right now. But it's really this idea that there are two big mistakes in life. One is worrying about what other people think about you. And the second is believing that other people think about you in the first place.
Yes.
Because no one is really thinking about you. Everyone is mostly just worried about themselves because naturally they're just, they might see you for a second, but then they move on to thinking about their own problem in their own life. And so many people are held back by that because they're scared that whatever action that they're taking is going to create this judgment from others. Oh, I can't put myself out there and share this content because what are people going to think? Or what if no one likes it? And then people are going to say that I'm not capable or that I'm not great. And it's very sad because there's a lot of talent out there that is held back by that exact thing. And, I've written this before, but like, I think that the worst prison in the world is having the talent and intelligence to achieve something great, but lacking the courage to go out and actually do it.
Yeah, I agree.
And there's so many people that are trapped in that.
This show is all about growth, right? We said at the beginning, I want you to get better as a person, because that means you're bringing a better version of yourself to your work. And I just believe so much in work. That work is about a contribution to the world. But what happens is we naturally grow, right? If we're doing well, we're learning, we're applying, and we start to level up, okay? But then when we get to the next level, what we find is less people there, and they're a lot more talented. You've got a really unique experience on this. We were talking about this beforehand. You were a stud pitcher in high school, and you go play at Stanford. Hello, big-time school, D1, and you told me, I was a stud in Massachusetts, but I get to Stanford and I'm not throwing the ball as fast as everybody. I think there's something that we all could learn from as we level up. We're going to have to realize the competition or the talent around us is better. And what do we do, Sahil, when we realize, as you did, I'm not the best pitcher on this staff? What did you learn from that we can learn?
Yeah, I have a very funny story about this exact thing that I don't think I've ever talked about or said publicly. So the first day I got to Stanford, I came in like thinking I was hot stuff, right? Like I was big fish in a small pond in Massachusetts, had never really been punched in the face, metaphorically or literally, and things had generally come pretty easily academically and with baseball. And I got to campus the first day at Stanford, and we go to the locker room, and it's the first time you're going to have like your own locker, right? Like this is a big deal. You're going to this big, nice college locker room. It's going to be all fancy. It's your first time. And you're looking around for your locker, and every single person has their own locker with their nameplate on it. And I'm like looking, I can't find mine. And then finally I see like in the corner of the room, there's this one locker that has two names on it. It's shared locker. It's like the worst locker that you could possibly have. And mine is that one.
No.
It's shared with like a walk-on or something. So in like an instant, I got deflated.
There's
like,
the totem
I
pole.
thought I was great. And I came in here and I'm literally like the lowest person on the totem pole to the point where I have a shared locker. And I remember calling my dad and I was like, man, maybe I made a mistake. I should have gone to Ivy League school, something smaller where I could have really been one of the guys. And he said, this is where the work begins. That was his response. And I remember that really sticking with me, that idea that like, okay, you face the thing where you have to question whether you are at the level that you need to be at. And rather than continuing on the path I was on, which was the victim mentality of feeling deflated around it, his response was, this is where the work begins. This is where you lean into it. This is where you pay the cost of entry to go and achieve the thing that you want. And the lesson was just that. It was every single thing that you want in life is on the other side of something that you don't want to do. It's on the other side of something challenging, a price that you need to pay. And being clear-eyed about that price is very important. And he was instilling that in me. And it's a lesson that I've carried throughout my entire life since. It was a lesson that was formative in needing to find my way when I was at Stanford and trying to figure out how I could shift my identity as a player to actually carve out playing time and a real role on the team. And it's a lesson that's applied throughout my life at all the different phases.
Yeah, I want to follow up on that because I'm curious what your thoughts are on the mental side of that. In other words, you knew now I got to put in the work, but then there is the psychology, the reality that we compare ourselves whether we want to or not, and there's discipline there, but the mindset to now go, all right, I'm not the best pitcher on this staff, but what is that mindset to be able to now realize with some humility, but also go, hey, there's still a contribution for me to make. Yeah. Thoughts on that?
Things that are within your control became the entire focus. And I went to the first practice, so I saw other people throw, and I had this moment where I was like, the ball gets to the plate much faster when those guys throw it than when I do. And that was a humbling moment, but a very important one because I realized like I can't control my talent. The fact that guy's 6'7" and built like a barn versus what I look like, but I can control how I show up every single day. And my grandfather on my mom's side had once told me, you get much further in life by being consistently reliable than you do by being occasionally extraordinary. And that had always really sat well with me. I kind of understood that.
That's great truth. I
just have to show up every single day. And if I do that, I'm going to be hard to kill in the long run if I just keep showing up. And a lot of this is sort of in that vein. It's like, how do you make yourself hard to kill? Well, showing up every single day with the same level of energy and intensity is a really good way to do that because I think in life, one of the things I have learned is just every single thing matters. It's tempting to try to pick and choose the things where you're going to show up with great energy and intensity and attitude. And unfortunately, the world sort of forgets your best and judges you for your worst. And so every single thing that you do actually matters, even the little things. And top performers and the people that are at the top of their craft show up for the small things just as much as they do for the big things. Yeah. And they show up for that tiny little practice or that stupid workout or the thing that they didn't want to do in the exact same way that they would when it's, the final match on the main court at Wimbledon.
What I love and I want people to know is that you developed a very specific pitch and the sinker ball. And that's not the sexy pitch.
One.
Nobody wants to show up and say, I'm a great sinker baller, right? Yeah. I mean, nobody even says that much. But I mean, there's something there that I took away that I want the audience to grasp, is that you found your niche, you found your role there, and in something much bigger than yourself. And that, to me, I really admire that you, even at that young age, went, okay, I can contribute here. And it's back to your grandmother's statement, consistently reliable. You contributed on that team, yes?
Yeah. I ended up being a really key part of the team, especially in my later years when I was actually throwing significantly less hard because of an injury. I was most effective. And I've never really thought about it, but the interesting thing about all of that was I just recognized that you probably weren't going to give up 3 or 4 hits in a row. The way that people gave up runs in college, anyone that knows baseball, in college baseball, the way people give up runs is because they walk guys or they hit guys. It's not that they gave up 3 or 4 hits in a row and then a home run. Guys just aren't that good. You have great fielders. If you just throw strikes, there's kind of a limit to how bad you can do. And so I kind of just decided that. I was like, I'm just going to throw the ball over the plate. And if they want to get 4 singles in a row, I'm throwing a sinker, so usually a sinker, guys are going to hit a ground ball. And if they want to get 4 singles in a row to score a run, go for it. Yeah. But I think it's likely that one of those, just probabilistically, is going to end up going to one of my fielders who are amazing because we're at a great school. And we're going to get 3 outs before that happens. And for the most part, that actually played out. But it's you giving up your ego in that process to say, I'm not going to be the guy that tries to blow people away and gets the fancy stats. I think my junior year, in 50 or so innings pitched, I think I only had 17 strikeouts, which is an embarrassingly low number on a stat sheet. But I was totally comfortable with it because I knew that was how I was actually going to be able to perform for the team.
Yeah. This is a beautiful setup for a societal problem that I want us to talk about.
Ooh, I love societal problems.
I know you do, and so do I. Coming out of the pandemic, we began to see data, and it really was reported on a lot in 2023, that the numbers bear out that there's about 7 million men in the United States that are of working age and do not have disabilities. They are able. They are working able and they are working age, and they are not engaged in the workforce. They are essentially living off of somebody else. And as you look further into the data, the largest chunk of those men were not college educated. And if you go further in the data, which I did, the feeling is a sense of embarrassment. They feel as though the American dream has passed them by because society has essentially told them that they were less than if you didn't get a college degree. So there's the context that I want us to weigh in on. We have 7 million men, and again, this is still a problem, and this is about a society. This is about the ability to sustain a society, to provide. This is not just that's a sad piece of data over there. You have a large following of young men for obvious reasons. Your thoughts on that data when I hit you with that?
I have a few reactions. First off, I think that we have, in the social media age in particular, been sold this lie that your work has to be your purpose. And that if you don't absolutely love your job and find that purpose and calling in it, that you shouldn't be doing it, and that you need to be miserable. And I think that is a very dangerous lie, because the reality is you don't have to like what you're doing to see it connected to something higher order in your life. I spent thousands of hours having conversations with people as I researched this book and talking to a lot of people about their purpose. And there was one man in particular who works at a factory on like an assembly line. He puts together widgets. Hates his job. Like, works 10-hour days doing something he doesn't like. But he has so much energy for his job because of one simple thing. Every single day, he connects it to his higher order purpose, which is to be the father that he didn't feel he had, to provide for his boys, to give them a life that he didn't feel like he had. And so every day when he goes to work, he knows he doesn't like the work, but he knows that it is in service of something on a higher level, something that he does take very seriously, something that gives him this incredible feeling of pride that he is acting in the service of others. And so for him, it's an incredible example of that. Like, you don't have to necessarily enjoy every single thing that you're doing all of the time for it to be in service of a greater good in your life,
Well,
whether that's personal or on a broader level.
Even in a dream job, you're going to have 25, 30% of your day. It would be a rule of thumb that it's monotonous, you don't enjoy it. And I think that's a very key point. But in making that point, I do want to say this. I think that we've also got an equally damaging lie that says work, it's not meant to be enjoyable. You can't find meaningful work. It's just something you have to do to live. I think you're right, but you got both of these lies over here that have created confusion for a lot of people where it's like, and while I agree you can have a higher purpose than purpose in the work, that's absolutely true. But I also believe a lot of people don't believe they can do work that they enjoy just by looking at their wiring.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of like the lost pride in punching the clock on something and the joy that you can feel in punching the clock.
Yes.
My dad's grandfather was so my great grandfather on my dad's side was a vegetable peddler in New York City. This is like probably the 1920s or something like that. And my dad always tells me stories about him when I was growing up of how he'd go out for these 12-hour days because he'd have to be at the dock to go pick up the fresh vegetables or whatever at 4 a.m. and then he'd go spend the whole day and he'd come home and he'd have his dinner and take his hot bath and then do the whole thing over again every single day because there was no days off. It was just what he did. And the amount of pride generationally that I think was also just taken in the hard days work idea
absolutely
has sort of been lost. I mean, now we have this it's sort of become a meme of you should work smart, not hard. And my take on that in general, especially for young people when they bring that up, is you cannot work smart before you work hard. And for one actually very simple reason, which is when you are young, the only asset that you have is time. That is literally your only asset because you don't have money, you don't have networks, you don't have experience, you don't have knowledge, you don't have wisdom. You don't have any of those things. All you have is time. And so what you need to do is you need to trade that time to get those things that you don't have. You trade the time to get money, to get networks, to get wisdom, to get experience. Then once you have those, you can take them and put them into the most important opportunities. You can work smart to get those high leverage outcomes, the 10, 100,000x outcomes that you're looking for. But you can't do that in the opposite order because you don't have those things that allow you to work smart. It's like one of those video games where you're on a map and the whole map is black and you're in the one spot of light. And saying working smart is saying okay, I'm only going to drill in the area where I am. But you don't know if the gold is there. So why would you drill there? Yeah. You need to work hard to go uncover the map. Now you know where the gold is, and now you can work smart in that one area for the next 10 years to chip away at it.
I'm going to put you on the spot because I know you can handle it, but let's just create a little metaphor here, a little fantastical scene. You've got, let's say, these millions of young men that are frustrated. Your thoughts on society in general. What are a few truths, some hard truths straight from Sahil? You're going, okay, boys, this is what you need to know right now because I think you're really tapping into something right now. What would you say to them? What do they need to know?
The only way to make money is to create value. There's no shortcut to making money. The only way to make a lot of money is to create a whole lot of value for other people. And focusing anywhere else on whatever the hack, whatever the cheat code, whatever the system, whatever the hot buzzword is that someone's trying to sell you in their course or their Discord community or whatever it is that people are selling you is losing sight of the real core atomic unit of this, which is just identify a problem, create a solution, and then scale that solution. That's all making money is. It sounds simple. Doesn't say it's easy, but that's all it is. So if you don't know where to start, rather than worrying about courses and, like all of the fancy stuff that people are trying to sell you, just look around you and identify a problem and then figure out a solution to that problem and then figure out how to scale that solution. The more you can scale it, the more money you're going to make. But there's no cheat code to making money. That's all it is. The richest people in the world have created billions and billions, trillions of dollars of value for other people, and they've captured a small portion of that. And so losing sight of that, I think, is a really big pain point for a lot of people. Another one is there's no such thing as making it. I constantly, when I talk to young people, have this thing of like people say, oh yeah, like once I make it, then I'll just be able to coast. Then I'll chill. Then I'll do this. Once I get this much money, then I'll be happy. Then I'll just chill. That's not how a market or how an economy works. The second you stop, no one's giving you money. No one's handing out this stuff, right? It's if Apple stops producing iPhones, in 2 years, they will no longer be a big company. It's just their biggest company in the world, right? They will not exist anymore if they stop producing value for other people. And so it's like that old adage of a gazelle wakes up every morning and it has to outrun the lion or it'll be eaten, and the lion wakes up and has to outrun the gazelle or it'll starve. And the point is that whether you're the gazelle or the lion, every single morning when you wake up, you better start running. And that applies to life very clearly. The last one I'll share is there is a very easy out of blaming your time or energy. And what you really need to blame is your desire. I had a conversation recently with this 27-year-old who was complaining that he was not happy with his standing in life and with his job, and he wants to go start his own thing. He hates his job, doesn't find any value or purpose in it. But he said, I don't have the time to go start this new thing. And so I asked him to walk me through his day. And he walked me through the structure of his day, and it involved 2 hours in the evening that was basically eating dinner and kind of Netflix and chilling to end the day. And so I said, okay, why don't you take 30 minutes of that or an hour of that and use it to start building this future vision that you have for your next life? And he said, no, I can't do that. I really need that time to unwind. And my response was, do you need to unwind more than you need to change your life? And I don't mean that to sound brutal or harsh. I mean it quite literally, that you have to make sacrifices and trade-offs if you want to change your life. If you don't want to change your life, you don't need to. Then continue to unwind and do that. But you need to decide whether the thing that you truly want in life is going to supersede the thing that you are currently doing. Yeah. And you need to make the trade-offs and sacrifices and incur the pain in order to get to the other side of that. Most people aren't willing to hold themselves to the fire in that way. You say, like, I don't have the time or energy, but if you have a 6 a.m. flight to go on vacation, you will get your ass out of bed at 3 a.m. to go make that flight. Right. But then if it's the same wake up time to go and change your life, you're saying you don't have the time or energy to do it. So like the cognitive dissonance that's there is very real.
Well, the irony is it's like you're basically saying to him, create a life that you don't need to unwind from. Mm-hmm. Seth Godin famously said something to that effect, build a life that you don't need to take a vacation from. He's not anti-vacations. Mm-hmm. Everybody needs to vacate. But the idea that I just need to soothe myself or I need to medicate myself as opposed to make the tough changes to where you go, man, this was a really good day.
Yeah.
A really good day.
Yeah, when I was, let's see, how old was I? 23. Right when I was getting done with college, I wrote this letter to my future self. And I sealed it to open 10 years in the future. So it was 2014. I was about to graduate, and I wrote this letter. And one of the lines in it was that basically that I hope I was finding joy in the things that I was doing for work. And I was like, I don't really know what that means, but I think it looks something like enjoying an average Tuesday.
Yeah.
And since I've opened it now and internalized that, I was like, that's actually kind of a North Star for me of like this average Tuesday theory for life, to say, how much do I enjoy an average Tuesday? And at the point when I feel like, I can wake up on a Tuesday morning and feel really great about the things that I get to do and what the day looks like, that feels to me like a sort of peak life moment.
Yeah. We've been talking about the book and actually really wanted to have you summarize the content in the book. This is rich with stuff, but the 5 types of wealth, time, social, mental, physical, financial. I love the holistic approach to this. I want to kind of tee that up for you. This means a lot to you. You've been successful for a while. This is your first book. You've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this. Talk about the concept of the 5 types. Are any of them in your mind more important than the other? Do they build off of each other? For those who are just hearing about this for the first time, I want you to unpack this.
Yeah. So the book is not about me, but it is a manifestation of my journey in the sense that for the first 30 years of my life, I was very, very narrowly focused on a definition of success that was sort of handed to me by someone else, and that was financial success. It's the cultural default setting that I think we all naturally find ourselves drawn towards. And the biggest reason that I see for that is because it is the most measurable. It is so easy to put a single number to your worth and your success in the world. And Peter Drucker, the management theorist, said, what gets measured gets managed. So the thing that you can measure becomes the thing that you try to optimize around, the thing that you focus on, it gets all your attention. Unfortunately, it is also something that, beyond a certain point, is not connected whatsoever to your ability to live a fulfilling, happy, healthy life, which is the real war that we are all fighting.
That's right.
The long-term war is all about time, people, purpose, and health. Those are the things that at the end of your life that you are going to really be focused on. Those are the things that are going to create the most meaning in your journey. Money is a tool in certain cases to enable those, but it cannot be an end or a goal in and of itself. In other words, money isn't nothing. It simply can't be the only thing. The book is really a way to think about how to measure, make decisions, and then design your life around this idea of trying to win that war, not just focusing on the individual battle of how to make money. And financial wealth is one of the 5. It is very, very important. And there are seasons of your life, particularly early on, when building a stable base around financial wealth is the best thing that you can do, because it frees you up for all of these other things and these decisions to be easier ones later on down the road. So it is by no means saying to not think about money, but it is saying that as you make these decisions along the way, to consider them in the context of this much broader set of measurements in your life.
Yeah. What strikes me about this approach is I'm sitting here thinking, and I think this is a fair statement. You can weigh in if you disagree, but we are the wealthiest country in the world, but not the healthiest by a long shot. And it feels like so much of this American consumerism that we chase, more money, because we know money gives us more options, certainly more freedom. But can you be truly successful if you're winning in all those areas, but you're not winning in your physical health?
No. And I mean, I write about that in the book. Several of these almost make it impossible to enjoy the fruits of your financial wealth.
Absolutely.
If you don't have, social wealth as an example, if you don't have people to enjoy the ride with, no one dreams of being on a yacht by themselves, right? Like no one wants to go around and do these fancy vacations by themselves. Like you want your people with you. And at the end of the day, when you ask people what they envision for their future state of life, it's always surrounded by people that you love. It's like your wife, your partner, your kids, your grandkids, friends. And then you ask them what actions they are taking in the present to affect that end, and it's totally dislocated. Right? I might tell you my priorities are like family and health and all these things. Then you come watch me for a week and all I'm doing is chasing money. There's something that's dislocated. And there's a lot of, especially in the US, consumerism that is entirely based on creating an impression in others. Like I have this thing in the book. At the end of every section, at the end of each type of wealth, there's a guide. And that guide is actual action steps you can take to build this type of wealth. And they're all science-backed, proven, both through personal experience and through real research and science. And one of the things that I have in the social wealth section is this idea of like a status test, bot status test, I call it, which is when you are going to buy something, ask yourself, would I buy this thing if I couldn't tell anybody about it.
Oh.
So like, I'm going to buy a fancy watch. Would I buy this fancy watch if I couldn't take a picture of it and post it on social media, or if no one could ever see it? It just had to be purely for my own enjoyment. Would I still buy this thing? 90+% of the things that you were going to buy, guarantee you wouldn't buy them. The like fancy car, like the fancy expensive car that's going to depreciate in value and be worthless in a few years, is not getting you from here to your job.
I've never even thought about it. You're right.
Any better. It's just that you want other people to see you in it because you think that it confers a level of respect and admiration that it doesn't. Because all people do, I think Morgan Housel has talked about this, all people do is they see themselves in the car and think about how cool they would look. They don't see you and think how cool you would look. They're thinking about themselves. And so the point that I make there is that bot status is very flimsy. It's like, it's fleeting. You go try to acquire it through social, memberships or a fancy car or fancy jewelry, a fancy handbag, whatever those things are, and it's fleeting, it's fickle. It doesn't actually earn you the respect and admiration from the people that you care about. What does is the things that you cannot buy. It's a really healthy and fit body. It's a meaningful, purpose-driven job, something that you've truly built through hard effort. It's a deep, loving relationship. When you see that with someone, with their kids or with their wife, you really admire that in them. Those are things that the richest person in the world cannot have any faster than you. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, I don't care how much money they have, they cannot buy a loving relationship. In fact, it's often antithetical to a loving relationship, how much money they have. So recognizing that and chasing the things that you need to earn rather than all those things that you think you can buy your way to is a really helpful razor or heuristic for living a better life.
Yeah, that's so rich. To that end, I'm sure you're familiar with the longest study on relationships, Harvard. You're okay. This is what's fun is when the guest is reading half the stuff that you read. So David McClellan, who led the study for a long time at Harvard, is quoted as saying 95% of our success or failure, either side, success or failure in life, is directly related to the people we spend the most time with. Do you have a lot of intentionality around the people you spend time with? I mean, you're limited. We heard your daily schedule. Mm-hmm. So we know you're limited. Anybody who's serious, man or woman, who's getting after life, you just have limited time outside of that tight family unit. How intentional are you, and what are some rubrics that you kind of guide yourself with as the people you let invest in you?
There is scientific evidence that the people you surround yourself with determine your outcomes. The Pygmalion effect is this psychological phenomenon where we rise or fall to the level of expectations that others have for us, the people that we surround ourselves with. So if you are around people who believe that you are capable of more, who are encouraging you to think bigger, who think very highly of you and think you are capable, you will rise to the level of those expectations. So similarly, if you're around people who belittle you, who laugh at your ambitions, who tell you to be more realistic, you will fall to the level of those expectations. So I cannot think of a single better reason to be very intentional about the people that you allow into your energy, into your space, and to be really deliberate about culling people that are not promoting that sort of healthy view of yourself. Unfortunately, that also means that you are going to incur periods of real loneliness as you are growing and changing, because you are going to have times when you start to shift your perspectives, your values start to change and develop, your journey starts to take you further away from your prior environment, and you are going to have changed, but the environment didn't. And so you're going to come to a time when you quite literally feel like you were almost speaking a different language than the people that you previously knew. And that can be a very lonely period because you have not yet attracted the new people that are going to be around you and supporting you and thinking big with you, but you have left the confines of the prior place. And that is just I view that as a tax, if you will, on personal transformation and growth. You have to be willing to pay that tax. It is sort of the cost of entry for changing your life in whatever way. But I think that, I view that Harvard study as probably the most important study of the last 100 years. Dr. Robert Waldinger, who's the current director, was one of the early readers of the book and is in there as well. And I think that's the most fascinating study. Just the fact that they found that the single greatest predictor of your physical health at age 80 was your relationship satisfaction
Yes.
at age 50.
Yeah.
It was more important than your cholesterol, blood pressure, whether you drank, smoked, all of those things. It was how you felt about your relationships impacted your health more than anything else.
Yeah, I have gotten into it so deep, and the findings of it are so amazing. And I've thought many times. I was on a podcast recently where somebody asked me what advice I'd give young people, and I said, if you're not happy with your life, change the people in your life. Period. It's the quickest way to change your life. And whatever the issue is. If you don't have enough money, you get too much debt, start hanging around people who save money and invest, and there's that lifting effect.
Yeah, and people say that there's that common phrase that you're the average of the 5 people.
Jim Rohn made that famous. Yeah.
It's actually not true. It's even worse than that.
Yes.
Which is that the science now shows, there's developing science around the fact that you actually converge to the lowest common denominator
That's correct.
in your group. Like they did this study with walking treadmills in an office where they put walking treadmills out, and what happened was that everyone converged to the person that walked the least. And so the reminder there is that it's even more important than you think to be judicious about the people that you are allowing into your space and energy, because you are naturally going to converge to that person that is holding you back. I mean, I call it like the boat anchor. It's like pulling you back as you're trying to move forward.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. You've probably heard people talk about different kinds of flags in relationships, red flags, green flags, even beige flags. Now, it's hard enough to keep track of what they're all supposed to mean, much less keep them in mind when you're trying to balance relationships with health, family, and work. So here's a tip. Don't waste time on arbitrary labels. Just focus on the values you share with the people in your life. Stuff like faith, honesty, communication, and work ethic. And if you're not even sure what your values are, therapy can help you figure them out. Find what you're looking for in your relationships and decide your non-negotiables. That's why I recommend BetterHelp. BetterHelp is 100% online therapy with licensed therapists. That means you can talk with your therapist when it's convenient for your schedule. Just fill out a short online survey to get matched with a therapist. Plus, you can switch providers at any time for no additional cost. So whether you're dating, married, finding friends, or just working on yourself, do it with help from BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/Ken to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/Ken. I have got a difficult and complicated relationship with the word luck. I get a little cranky if I'm calling myself out when I hear people talk about luck. But you talk about luck in a way that I really enjoy the way you talk about it. So I'm going to hit you real quick to catch our audience up. You talk about the 4 types of luck: blind luck, motion luck, awareness luck, and uniqueness. Walk us through those, because it did change almost to the point where I was almost an absolutist, which is stupid, about luck. But you come at it a different way, and I think it's helpful.
Yeah.
Walk us through that.
Yeah, so this is an idea derived from a man named Dr. James Austin. I think he wrote this book in 1978. I might be quoting that off. He was a neurologist, and he talks about the fact that there are 4 types of luck. And the first type is blind luck. That is chance, real chance occurrences, like acts of God.
Totally random.
Where you're born, who you're born to, winning the lottery, like totally random chance events. Type 2 is luck from motion, which is you are creating motion with your actions. You are ambitious, you're hustling, you're out and about, you're moving.
That's the old phrase, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yeah. You're creating collisions in the world that are sparking luck. Type 3 is luck from awareness, which is the idea that you start getting better at spotting luck because of your knowledge and experience set in something. So you become an expert in some craft, and as a result, you can see where the ball is going or see where the puck is going. You can skate to that spot, and it says you're getting lucky. And then type 4 is uniqueness luck. It's the idea that because of your unique set of eccentricities or hobbies, luck starts actually coming to you. People view you as the one person on that thing, so when the event happens, they come to you. The luck is kind of dropped in your lap. And the real insight there is that not all luck is created equal, that you can actually create luck in your life through the actions that you are taking. And while the early years of your life are governed by blind luck, those things that you cannot control, where you're born, who you're born to, the circumstances of your upbringing. The rest of your life is really governed by controllable things, by controllable luck. And through taking actions like the hustle in the early years of your kind of 20s and 30s, like the building of the skills and experience set that lead to that awareness luck, and like the building of true expertise and mastery that lead to that uniqueness luck, you are in control of that. You can actually expand your luck surface area, the surface area within your life on which lucky events can strike.
Yeah, I love that. That to me is just such a great example of how we can generate good things for ourselves. You know, it's not this just dumb luck situation. Fantastic stuff. Okay, we got a question right here.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
So a question for Sahil. I know you've talked about your little one a lot. And I know he can't read yet, but what are some of these habits that you talk about in the book, or some of these fundamental truths that you can instill at him at an early age without, having to get too deep into the weeds? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So my son is he's 2.5. So while he cannot necessarily understand things in real depth, I do believe that there's a whole lot that kids are just naturally absorbing from seeing the way that you act. And I would say probably the number one thing I've changed my mind on from before he was born to now is you can't teach your kids anything. You just have to embody things, and they learn them through seeing you doing. And that has been a really core part of this, because I am very much right now in a season of unbalance, meaning I am pursuing something with all of the energy that I have in me because I view it as very important and it means something to me. Making sure that my son sees that is important because at some point in his life, I want him to pursue something with his whole energy and effort. And I can see him starting to get that now, like in the sense that he will come when I'm doing some work and come and say like, he calls himself Row. His name is Roman. He's like, row work. And he'll come and like pull up a chair next to me at my desk with a little like fake computer that we gave him. And he'll like type and act like he's doing things. And he's starting to understand that there's something that I'm doing that I care about. There's something that I'm putting effort towards on a daily basis. He's getting that. And the thing that I've wrestled with is I view the importance of time with children in these early years as very important. I've talked about this concept that you have this like 10-year window with your kids that is so magical, and including them on the journey, the why of why you are doing things during that period is very important, because if you don't, I think kids fill the void with the worst version of it. So when I'm traveling, if I'm here right now and I don't explain to him what I'm doing or why I'm doing it, he fills it in his mind with like, Dad doesn't care about me. Dad's not here. Dad's always gone. But it's not that. It's actually that we are all on a mission together that is very meaningful to me, and that it matters because we're trying to create an impact. We're trying to positively impact people's lives. But I need him to understand. I need to actually be able to articulate that to him for him to understand it over long periods of time. So those are the things that I'm really focused on right now, is him really absorbing and seeing that. And then, the last thing I would say is like, I constantly talk about the value of doing hard things, of embracing delayed gratification. And it's a big reason that I love when he comes and like watches me do my cold plunge, or watches me like work out or do little things like that, or like watches the videos of, marathon stuff, whatever it is that I'm doing that might seem like a silly pursuit of like adult hobbyist. There's an important lesson underlying that I remember getting from my dad, from watching him do hard things in whatever it was, that I think continues kind of getting passed down in that way.
Yeah, really insightful. Yeah. And I'm further ahead than Sahil, so I'll tell you, enjoy that season up to 10 where they kind of care, because at about 11, 12, 13, they don't care anymore.
Yeah.
They want to disappear, and it's a different season. And so you've written a lot about that time of influence. It's really important. I don't think the average parent realizes how important and how formative those early years are when you have their undivided attention, in the sense they want to be with you and they are so observant. They are a sponge around you. And I think we overlook that. And I know you've talked a lot about that. So that's kudos to you as a young dad on that, because he's a youngster. I mean, he's a little dude.
Yeah, he's a little dude.
But he's watching everything.
Yeah, they absorb a lot, and you see it in real time as they're getting older. I just we feel we feel a lot of gratitude through him. We struggled to conceive for a year and a half, 2 years. It was a really challenging time in our relationship and our life, in part due to, my own mental state at the time. And I think that was a big contributor to the fact that we were struggling to conceive, frankly, in hindsight.
What was going on? Would you share?
It was my very narrow, myopic focus on money as the sole, purpose of my life was sort of robbing me of everything else. I was drinking 7 nights a week. We were living far away from our parents. I was never seeing them. My mental health was not good. I was getting one thing at the expense of everything else. And now there's quite a bit of science that just shows that, stress levels impact fertility in a lot of ways. And it was a really beautiful thing because we, in May of 2021, made the decision to make this change in our life. And I left my job and we decided to move across the country to live closer to our parents, make this big change, and for a variety of reasons. And within 2 weeks of making that change, my wife got pregnant after this 2 years of struggle. And it was just one of those indications, whether you're religious or not, where you feel like God sort of winked at you, that like when life comes into alignment, everything falls into place as it should. You're in the right place. You did the right thing. And so we also just feel so much gratitude for having had him and the joy that he's brought into our life.
Did that experience change the way you look at faith or God, or was there already a pre-existing thought pattern or relationship on that? I'm very curious.
I would say that drew both of us closer to both each other and to the belief in a higher power. I think about it constantly today, not to get overly personal, but like I had an experience a few weeks ago where I was at my desk working on something, really focused, and my son came in. He's 2.5, so he's a little bit of a terrorist.
Yeah.
He's like throwing stuff around.
Here comes Roro.
Yeah, he's like jumping, throwing stuff around in my office. And I started feeling this like thought pattern of like, why is he doing this? So annoying. All these things, right? Like, why is he, I'm trying to work. And I flashed myself back to 4 years ago when we were struggling to conceive. And I prayed every single night that we would one day have a healthy child. And then here I was in the present moment complaining about that exact thing that I had prayed for. And it was a reminder to me that sometimes the things you pray for become the things that you complain about if you let it. And sometimes you are literally living out your prior prayers. But we get so caught up in whatever our next thing is, our more, like whatever it is that we're chasing, that we don't take time to zoom out and think about that in the present and just have gratitude for that moment, for that thing. And so since that moment, I reminded myself, I feel like I am much better able to experience and just embrace some of those moments, even though they're like annoying in the action that they're taking, to just zoom out and appreciate that those things that you prayed for that you now have, you need to recognize them in order to fully feel that texture in the moment.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that with us. I think that's helpful to a lot of people. All right. We'll say back here, another question.
My question is specifically around what we talked about, people, your circle, and your social wealth and social network. Like something you said around when you're in that phase of growth and you're trying to transition, you get to the point where it's a lonely place. It's a struggle to build new connections right now. Because I'm in a new place. I've just been here for a year and haven't met too many new people. I'm trying to network and trying to find new people. I'm at the point where I'm rounding up my program right now and I'm looking for next steps. What would you say are like the steps, like, or things you have in your book that says how to build your network and how to actually get to connect with?
In the social wealth guide of the book, there is one particular section that I called my anti-networking guide. And the reason I say anti-networking is because I think that networking has become a term that has been hijacked that has effectively meant like this transactional idea of like handing out business cards and getting like 1,000 business cards. And the reality is that what you're looking for is not networking, it's genuine relationships. You're trying to build genuine relationships that compound better than any financial investment that you can possibly make, especially in your younger years, because the network, the people are going to be the things that lead to the best opportunities. It's not something that you found, it's the people that bring those things. The best advice I could give you is to think about this concept that I share of finding value-aligned rooms. And what I mean by that is sit down with like a blank sheet of paper and write down some of your sort of core values, like things that you feel very strongly about. And it could be values or sort of like passions, interests, energies. So say you're really into health and like sort of like natural living. Let's say you're really into like the concept of delayed gratification. You're really into those kind of things. The next step of that is, okay, that's one of my core values. What are rooms that self-select for other people that are similarly wired, that have that same set of values? So in the case of those examples, natural, health, all those things, a farmer's market is a really good example of a place where there's going to be a whole lot of people that are interested in that same thing. Gyms are going to be an example of that. Hiking trails are going to be a good example of that. Run clubs are going to be a good example of that. There are these rooms that exist out there that have a whole lot of people that actually are like wired around this very same similar set of values to you, that if you go and spend time in, you're going to be surrounded by a bunch of people that are thinking on a similar wavelength about the future as you are. That is a way to sort of work smart around building genuine connections, because you already know when you're spending time around those people that you have something shared. There's already a layer that's been established before you even have a conversation. And it doesn't need to be that all those people are working in the same sector as you, that they're doing the same interesting things. It's actually sometimes even better if they're doing totally different things that expand your horizon and make you think differently about the world. But you have that mutual understanding of each other from the fact that you're both in that room. I have consistently found that to be the way that I have built some of the best relationships in my life. My like closest mentors in my life were people that I met at the gym at 4:45 in the morning. And that's partially because the type of people that show up at the gym at 4:45 in the morning tend to be high achieving. Especially where I was living at the time, I was like putting myself into rooms that were value aligned in that way. And it wasn't intentional at the time. That was just how I was living. And now as I've sort of distilled that and deconstructed it, that's the real core insight to it.
It's a really good answer. And I'm going to add one thing to this. When you find those value rooms that connect to you, what you need to be doing is realizing in that moment there's already shared values. And then the number one thing people like talking about is themselves. So I have found that if you go in those rooms and you begin to be the guy who's asking questions, so you meet Sahil, right, on a trail and you guys are getting water, go up to him and start asking him questions about him. And the more interested you become, the more interesting you become, right? That is absolutely gold. Because if I've just met Sahil, right, and I ask him 5 or 6 questions about himself, most people are going to now turn the tables and begin to ask questions about you. And now the relationship begins to build, not just, we've got commonality here in these values, which he talked about. But I think if you can begin to be the guy who's always asking about other people, they'll begin to ask about you. And that's where you find chemistry. You know what I mean? And that's really will help you. But that's a really good question and really important. And I want to stay here because I was going to get to this and you kind of mentioned it. This is a cool story. So take us back to the gym, because some people know this about
now
you.
I know where you're going.
Yeah. You're like, where's he going? Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, is in the gym in Palo Alto that you were just referencing. How did you guys meet? I'd love just to hear that initial, if you can remember that first moment. And then how does it develop to where this super powerful dude takes an interest in you and now has been a friend and mentor? This is fabulous.
Yeah. The first moment was 6 months long because, so I started working out at the gym. This is in Palo Alto, like right next to my office. I knew that I needed to go really early in the morning if I was going to make it before my workday started. And I was an analyst at a private equity fund, which means that you're working a lot. And so I started getting there every day at 4:45. They'd kind of come open the doors at like 4:50. And there was a group of call it 7 or 8 people that would show up every single day without fail at that time, every weekday. And it was the same people every single day. And so you kind of like build some level of camaraderie that it's like this group of guys and girls that...
You're kind of the freaks. Let's be
like,
honest. No one else is
like
doing this.
Yeah, there's like a little bit of just like, it's your gang. That's like you're in the trenches with them every day. And you aren't like working out together or anything, but you see them every day. You have conversations, you get dressed in the locker room, and then go to the office. And you talk to those people every single day. 6 months in, I've been doing this for 6 months every single day. And I'm like, I have a conversation with some guy, I walk away, and someone comes up to me and is like, do you know who that is? The guy you were just talking to. I was like, I don't know. That's the guy that I talk to every morning. It's like, that's Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple. I've been talking to this guy for 6 months and probably saying the dumbest stuff. Like like talking about kettlebell swing, like just probably saying the dumbest things and not thinking about the fact that this is this like incredible person. Partially because I wasn't in tech, so I didn't know tech people. That wasn't my area. And he wore glasses in the gym. He honestly at the time he was the new CEO. Like he wasn't nearly the figure that he is today in terms of his world renowned. He was kind of Steve Jobs' successor at the time. No one was really sure if he was going to make it or do well. And after I found out, I'd been talking to him about like an article that I'd seen. That I thought was interesting, where he had sort of talked about something that they were working on, and he hadn't seen it yet. And so then I got to the office that day, and I tried to cold email him. I was like, I guessed his email address, and I sent the article that we've been talking about. I was like, oh, by the way, here's the article. I'm guessing your email address. See if it's right. And it was right. And he replied right away and just said like, oh, hope you're as good with investments as you are with guessing email addresses, something. And I was like, took that as an opening. I'm big on like closed mouths don't get fed, so I might as well ask what's the worst. Right. So I was like, oh, would you ever be willing to grab coffee? Or, I'm starting my career. I would love, any perspectives. No, I'm not looking for a job. I'm not like, I wasn't trying to join Apple or do something. I just was trying to learn from someone that I really admired. And so he said yes. And that was the start of, now it's been 10 years that we've had a great relationship. He's been an incredible mentor and figure, was one of the main drivers when I decided to leave and go down this entrepreneurial path and do something different. Someone that I deeply respected and admired, sort of giving me permission almost, saying like, I think this is great. You should go do it. You clearly have a ton of energy for it. He was one of the early readers and reviewers of the book, which was incredible. And has just been an incredible figure in my life. But an amazing example of luck surface area of like, meeting him was very lucky, but it was engineered by the fact that I was waking up every single morning at 3:45 so that I could get to the gym at 4:45 and go and do this thing.
Absolutely right. But I do want to do a quick follow-up because I want people to understand that there will be moments for many of us, it may not be a Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, but a moment where we run into somebody who, hey, this is a fortunate situation, a lucky situation in that this is a person of great substance. Mm-hmm. Let's just call it that for lack of description. Once you realize that it was Tim Cook, so at first you're just acting like he's a normal guy, which
is, I think, very important, by the way, because every single person that approaches someone of that stature is looking for something, and for at least 6 months, I was just interacting with him on a daily basis.
And so that's my question.
As he was any other person.
Once you found out it was him, how did you act so that it didn't A, get weird, and B, you were able to still nurture what was now already just this kind of fun little relationship? I think that's important.
Yeah. I mean, I have always ascribed to the belief that like everyone is just a normal human being. There's very few people I've ever met in my life where I feel like you are almost not human because you're on some like entirely different level. Normally, that's like an athlete that is just so physically crazy and intimidating looking that I sort of feel like there's this weird, like you almost can't relate because they're on such a different level physically. Yeah. But with a business person, like he's an unbelievably normal, down-to-earth guy. Sure. He also is the type of person that was the CEO of the largest company in the world and showing up at the gym at 4:45 every single morning for 6 months. Like, that's the kind of guy that I just like. I just, like, I know a lot about you.
No entourage.
To the point of value-aligned rooms. Yeah. Same, like, at the time, there was, like, no security at the time. Now he has, it's like traveling with the president or something. Now he's got a full detail. It's very different. But, like, the type of person that is on that level and that's still, it's the point of you never made it. Still show up every single day and do this thing because it's just part of who you are. It's part of how you operate. I know that type of person. So like I can relate to that type of person. I am also a big believer that we all, no matter who you are and where you are, have something of value to add to everyone else in the world.
Right.
So he is the CEO. I clearly cannot tell him anything about leadership, about being a CEO, about Apple, none of those things. I can't add value in any of those ways. But there's ways that I can add value to his life. I certainly knew more about training at the time. So there was times when we would chat about different training things. I certainly saw and had texture on like a finger on the pulse of things that were being talked about in the world. So like the article that I sent him when I cold emailed him was something that I had seen that he had not seen, and I followed up to send it. It was a tiny little way that I could create some little bit of value in his life.
Absolutely.
And I think that's an important lesson of like, there's the tendency to think that you have nothing of value to add to these people. And it's not really true. I mean, I recently had dinner with a man named Mark Laurie, who's an incredible entrepreneur that founded diapers.com and sold it to Amazon. And then he founded jet.com and sold it for $1 billion to Walmart, has made an astronomical amount of money. And going into that, I felt this feeling of imposter syndrome, like have a one-on-one dinner with this guy. He's this amazing entrepreneur. I don't have anything to add. And what I found out while we were having the dinner was that he's working on a book, and he's interested in trying to understand the processes around book and what the launch and how it's working. And so it ended up being, frankly, that like I probably contributed more value to the conversation than he gave to me.
Without question.
Because he was really interested in something different and weird that I was doing that he doesn't know as much about. And so I left and I texted my wife saying that of like, it was a reminder of that fact that you might not think you are as impressive as someone or you haven't accomplished something, but you always have a different lens through which you viewed the world that can be valuable to that person. And so it's just getting creative enough to identify what that is. Like, I mean, Khalil and I met because he cold reached out to me, if I recall correctly. And when it stands out when someone does that, it's because they create value for you in that thing. They're like, oh, I identified something that I saw you write about, and here's like a different way you could think about that. Or here was something that I found that you might find interesting, an interesting article or an interesting follow-up. And now suddenly, like, that person is an N of one. And we've had a relationship since. We've corresponded. It's like,
here, I want to point something out here because you're right. What we need to understand coming off the coattails of what you just said is that people that are successful still want to be valuable. It's not like they've attained all the value they're going to attain. So when you reach out, something in the communication, you felt, I can be of value to him and I want to invest in him because of the way he reached out. Because to you, you go, I want people to be successful. And I think that's the other lesson here is that the Tim Cooks of the world, successful people, they want people to join them. The water's nice, and they're saying, come in. They want to add value to people if you do it the right way. If you connect the right way, they're going to be really reciprocal on that.
Yeah, the good ones are very positive some. Yeah. And you know very quickly if someone is not.
You can tell.
I've encountered successful people that are not.
Yeah.
And you can tell that they're they want to keep you down there because they don't want competition. The really great ones are never like that.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I also think everyone feels a duty to pay it forward in some way.
That's
the same way that, like, I think Tim felt mentored by Steve Jobs, right? Like when he first joined there and felt this level of connection to him and love for him. I'm sure that there's a part of him that wants to be of service to other people along the way. Otherwise, there's no reason to take time to do these things or to, support in any way. And I think it's on all of us to pay it forward in whatever way that we can. And I feel a responsibility to do that now. I'm not nearly on any level close to these people, but if I can pay it forward in some tiny way to people and help be the like catalyst that sparks them to improve their life, I can't think of a better way to use the next 50 years of mine.
All right, let's go right here.
So earlier you talked about being able to track financial wealth, right? It's easy. I can open up an app on my phone, look at my bank account, open up investments, see my number. For the other types of wealth, I feel like it's a little bit more difficult to track. And I was curious if you could give some insight into how you personally track those other sides.
Yeah.
I love that.
No, it's a great question. It was it's a core part of how I thought about when I was writing this book was on my own journey as we started redefining what success looked like to my wife and I, it was figuring out a way to measure these other areas. And I actually created a set of sort of questions for ourselves originally that we started measuring ourselves against. And the way we did it was for each of these areas, 5 statements, and we went from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And, it's things like for time wealth, I'm in control of my calendar and priorities. Strongly disagree, That'd be on one end, strongly agree, and put a number to each one of those. And so what I did in the book is there's an actual quiz that walks you through those statements. And we have an online version of it where anyone can take it and it creates a cool visualization for you that you can sort of track against. So if you go to wealthscorequiz.com, you can do this. It takes probably about 5 minutes, and it'll give you a visualization of where you are in life, sort of on this circle that fills in the different areas for the 5 buckets according to what your score was. And it was really cool as an exercise for us because we were able to track from May of 2021, when we made the change, to today, how has the overall circle sort of filled in as we've started to focus on these different areas. But would highly encourage you to check that out. I think it's a very cool starting point for thinking about, okay, where am I on this baseline? And then the next layer of it is, as you make decisions in life, to factor in these other areas in the decision-making process. Meaning, if you were to come and offer me a job for $10 million a year, if I was in the old scoreboard, the old way that I measured my life, sounds like a hell yeah opportunity, right? You're going to pay me a whole bunch of money. But now you add in a few layers to it, which is I have to move to Omaha, Nebraska. I have to work 100 hours a week, travel 300 days out of the year, working on things I hate. Okay, well, now I have a whole different set of considerations. And with this new scoreboard of these 5 types of wealth, I can think, okay, financial wealth, I'm going to get a big plus. That's great. I'm making a lot of money. But social wealth is going to take a big hit because I'm going to be away from everyone I love. I don't know anyone in Omaha. And I'm going to be traveling 300 days out of the year. I'm not going to see my son and wife. Big, big negative. Mental wealth, purpose. I'm going to be working on things I hate. It's going to take a big, big hit. And physical wealth, if I'm traveling that much and doing all these things, it's going to take a big hit. And time, because I'm working 90, 100 hours a week, working for someone else. So now suddenly a decision that seemed really, really easy in one direction on the old scoreboard feels very easy in the other direction on this new scoreboard. And the idea is like to frame things in this broader context gives you more clarity on the overall life impact of how these decisions are going to feel as you make them. So
Yeah, that's really good.
Wealthscorequiz.com is the place.
Yeah, I wanted the audience to get that, wealthscorequiz.com. That's really good. I want to ask you about priorities because I've followed your content enough to know. I mean, you're almost maniacal, and I say that as a compliment, not a negative. And one of the things I've heard you talk about is you stole an idea from Bill Gates, and you kind of made it your own. This idea of a think day, and I really resonate with that. And I wanted you to share that with our audience, and not only how you do it, but what you derive from it.
Yeah. So the insight here is that in most of our lives, and in modern work culture in particular, there's very little time to think. Everything is sort of stimulus and then immediate response. You get the email and you immediately respond. You get the request, you immediately respond. And it's why we feel like we're on this treadmill, so busy all the time, but not necessarily making progress on things. It's because we do not have space to actually think about things during our day. We're not actually taking the time to zoom out and look at bigger picture, real meaningful questions in our professional lives or in our personal lives for that matter. Bill Gates in the 1980s started doing this thing where he would, for a week, go off the grid once a year, and all he would do was like read and think about the biggest picture things facing Microsoft. And he credited it with a lot of the progress that they made, the big leaps forward. I know that I can't take a week off to do things like that. I'm not on the level or at the point in my life where I can do that. But I started carving out a day once a quarter to do that, to go sort of into a different environment and to think about some of the bigger picture things that I'm working on or that I'm doing. And there's question prompts that I share in the book for kind of guiding yourself during a think day process. And the whole idea is to like zoom way out and just start kind of thinking from a bigger picture view on what you're doing, why you're doing it. Is it the right thing? Are there assumptions that you need to question? One of the questions that I think is probably the best one that I share in there is, if you were the main character in a movie of your life, what would the audience be screaming at you to do right now? We've all had this experience. You're like watching a movie or a television show and you just want to like jump through the screen and grab the main character. Chase the girl to the airport or don't go down that hallway, whatever the thing is. And you are the main character in the movie of your life, and the audience would be screaming at you something right now. Something very, very obvious that you are ignoring. asking yourself that question, what is that thing that you are choosing to ignore that you need to go and act on, is a really helpful sort of lens to frame up some of the bigger changes you need to make in your life.
Yeah, boy, and I'm going to tell you something, that the hardest part of that exercise is to actually act on it, because that comes with a lot of junk.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that is really good. I like that. All right, another thing that I love that you talk about, and boy, this resonates, because if I look back on my personal life and my professional life, the greatest moments, things that I will, hopefully if I'm an old dude and I'm laying on a deathbed and everybody's gathering around being sad, I'm going to be telling this story over and over. I think of those stories. What are the moments, the high moments? All of those came on the backside of really dark moments. That's just my story. I don't know if everybody else resonates with that, but I'm fascinated by how you talk about the dark map. And this is your metaphor. I want you to unpack that for people, because I think it is so encouraging, and I think it's a great model for people to kind of grab onto. Talk about that.
Yeah, this is sort of derived from this, I'm half Indian. There's this idea in ancient Indian culture of Kala Chakra, which is like the wheel of time. It's this idea that life, and in that context, the universe, goes through this endless cycle of creation, destruction, and then rebirth. And you can feel that in your own life, in the sense that all these periods of creation, the like feelings when you're like on top of the world, things are going great, inevitably come to an end. And then you have that period of destruction, the time when like things feel like they're getting torn down, the challenges come. And during those periods of destruction, during that darkness, you find it impossible to see the light. You find it impossible to see how you are possibly going to escape that darkness in that moment. And the thing that I always say to people, and that I had to continue saying to myself during that own period in my own life, was it is always followed by a rebirth. And that rebirth is that blinding, unbelievably beautiful feeling where you can, like it finally clicks and you can feel yourself stepping out of it. And those are those incredible moments. And it always comes. But you have to have faith while you're in the darkness that it is coming and that it is there. The ancient poet Rumi said, the wound is where the light enters you. And that is that same idea, that the darkness is actually where the seeds of light are being sown. The seeds of that rebirth are being sown in the depth of that darkness that you're experiencing.
Wow, that is so good. Decision making. You spend a lot of time talking about decision making, and you once said, and I'm paraphrasing, most people make the big decisions slowly and the little decisions quickly, and you believe that should be reversed.
Yeah, this is a hot take. I have a belief that sometimes you're better off jumping out of the plane and hoping that you packed the parachute tight.
Okay.
In life, because your gut on big decisions is almost always correct, and it's quick, and you knew it. And we do a great job of talking ourselves out of our gut. And I think about the worst business decisions I've ever made in my life, without fail, were always when my gut was bad, but my mind convinced me that, but I could make a lot of money doing this. But the gut was bad. The business partner, the thing, the opportunity, there was something off.
Yeah, stop, don't. Yeah.
But I was then like, well, money, this, I could do that. They could make this could happen. And I talked myself into it, took a bunch of time and then talked myself into it. Inevitably a disaster.
Yeah.
Because the gut was right. The energy that you feel, I think the big point here is like we need to tune more into our energy.
100%.
Because you physically feel things before your mind actually picks up on them.
Okay, so do
that
you
idea
think
of gut instinct is real?
Yeah, so I want to ask you. So I don't think it's a hot take, and I think what you're suggesting is, the way I'm receiving that is, the big decisions should be value-based. So I made a lot of the big decisions of my life. I'm 50. I made the big decisions early. Big decisions, right? When I met Stacy, I was young, but we got married. I got married at 23. Thankfully, we're going to celebrate 27 years next year. I made a big decision that I want to be married. I believe she's the one, and that is a big decision. And I'm now managing that decision. It was like, she's the one, boom, let's go. But it's values-based. I think the big decisions are values-based, and if our body is telling us, to your point, the gut, I just think you're right, I guess is what I'm saying. I don't think you're not suggesting that it's just I think it's listen to that heart. Listen to your heart. Isn't that values-based?
Yeah, it's both values-based and work-based. That you either did the work to be prepared to take that leap or you didn't. And that happened over years leading up to it. Like when I decided to leave my work to go down this path that was totally unproven, it could have looked like an enormous leap of faith from the outside looking in. If you didn't know me and you didn't know anything about me, you'd said like, you're leaving a job in private equity that pays well to go write on Twitter. Like that's what it would have looked like. But you didn't see that I had written 300,000 words over the prior 2 years, every single day that I had written things. Hadn't missed a single issue of my newsletter, hadn't missed a single thing. You didn't see the like hours and hours that I spent on the weekends researching and working on these things. You didn't see all of that. I had perfect information on it because I saw it, I was in it. But the whole world had asymmetric, very, very imperfect information on the thing. And so you actually know already that the work you did made that leap feel significantly less like a leap.
That's correct.
In that moment. So you kind of knew that thing.
I like that. That's good.
The other piece here is that 90% of overthinking comes from the belief that the decision is what matters and not the actions that follow it. You said it perfectly in the context of your marriage. People think that it's the decision to get married and not how you show up as a husband every single day that follows that.
That's right.
That impacts the quality of that marriage.
Staying committed, don't quit in the rough seasons.
Yeah, that I'm focused on us growing as a partnership and as a relationship every single day, that I'm not going to avoid hard conversations, that we're going to show up for each other, that we're going to be loyal. Those are actions that you were taking on a daily basis, not the decision in the first place. When you place so much weight on the decision, it's too much of a burden on it. That does feel crazy intimidating. Like I have to pick the perfect job. No, you don't have to pick the perfect job at 20, 30, 40. You have to go and act to be excellent at the thing that you are doing.
Yeah.
If you go take a job and you don't like it, but you deliver on an excellent top 10% performer at your craft every single day, I guarantee things will work out for you. You might get a new opportunity within that same company that you really like. Or if you leave, they're going to say great things about you and you're going to get a good reference to the next thing. But showing up and saying like, oh, I hate this job, so I'm going to show up negatively, does only negative things for the next path from wherever you're going from there. So again, it's like you can 100% control the actions that follow the decision. You can't control whether it's going to work out or not. You make the bet, and then you control the actions that are actually following it.
Final question. I didn't plan to ask this, but you just said something that triggered it in me. There is increasingly, it feels like to me, more and more conversation on social media about trying to get really rich, and there's just this constant do this, work crazy hard, and you know, I'm old school. I love a hard work ethic, but I am curious your take on, there's a huge cost, and your life demonstrates it, to chasing an enormous amount of wealth in a short amount of time. And I'm asking, not stating, is it possible to do that popular stuff we see, and not wreck your personal life, wreck your physical life? It feels like it's just one or the other. And I'm not saying you can't be wealthy and also be healthy, because obviously you are. But at that point where you were, I feel like I hear a lot of those stories. I've seen a lot of those stories in my personal life with friends that made a lot of wealth quickly, but they sacrificed their family just because of the sheer amount of time and effort. I'm just curious. I'm just kind of free floating on this, but it feels like there's a trade-off there. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's possible to make a whole lot of money and build a life that you love while doing it. But I think it requires a mindset shift that I share in the book, which I think is rather simple, not easy, which is you cannot view these areas of life as existing on on-off switches, which is what most people think. Most people think that if I'm going to focus on making a lot of money, all these other switches in my life just get flipped off. Okay, I'm not going to, no family, no relationships, no health, no time. All these other areas get turned off. The reality is that all of these areas of life exist on dimmer switches. And turning anything completely off is dangerous and inadvisable because all of these areas atrophy. And if you turn your relationships completely off, you will not have relationships later down the line. If you are not there for the people in your life now, they won't be there for you when you need them later. If you're not investing in your health now, it's going to be very hard to turn back from that later. And so the point that I try to make in the book is if you view them as existing on a dimmer switch, you can take the approach of saying anything above zero compounds positively in all of these areas. They're all investments. So just because I'm way turned up on financial wealth, I'm in my 20s and my 30s, I'm building the foundation for the rest of my life. I want to build something meaningful. I want to make a lot of money. I think that's great. That's a great season of your life to do that. But don't shut off these other areas. Take the one tiny action daily that keeps the ball moving forward. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to be working out for an hour a day to get a health benefit. You need to do 15 minutes, 30 minutes, go for a walk. You don't need to have 1 million friends during that period of your life. What you need to do is send the text or do the phone call to the couple of people that really matter to keep those relationships along the way, to continue building them. And so the point and the whole call to action in the book is it is great to prioritize different things across different seasons of your life. You're going to have a season of your life where you are really focused on financial wealth building. That's great, and that's important. You are also going to have a season of life when your children are 5 years old, and you may not want to be working 80-hour weeks during that because you want to be present more during that season of your life. After that, when your kids are grown up, you may want to come back to going all in on something that you really care about, hopefully grounded in your purpose, grounded in something that means something to you. But what you prioritize within and across any one season can change. And it should change because you are dynamic and shifting over these different years. But not allowing any of the areas to completely turn off is essential if you want to build that life that feels comprehensively wealthy.
Yeah. Well, I started our conversation by saying that I believe a good conversation can change your life. And I hope today's did. I hope you take something away from it. I know I did. And I want to model that for you so much that I could have written down. But I'm back to your grandfather's statement, this challenge to not focus on being occasionally extraordinary, but really focus on being consistently reliable. And that hits me here because I think we're all tempted. I know I am as an Enneagram 3, a performer. I want to do the big thing, the shiny thing, to get the applause. But what really matters as it relates to being somebody who makes the contribution that they were created to make is that showing up day in and day out in all the roles of your life. For me, it's obviously a husband and a father and a son and a brother and a coworker, and then somebody who gets the opportunity to maybe influence a few folks. And so that's my challenge, and I challenge you over the days ahead. Take inventory. The 5 types of wealth, this book that Sahil has written, that's a great place to start. But look at your life and ask yourself, where do I need to be more consistently reliable? Because that's where we will make the contribution that if we make it to our deathbed, we'll reminisce about and we won't have regrets. So I challenge you to do that. Hey, to our audience, will you join me in thanking Sahil one more time? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So good. And hey, a request. If you'd like to join us sometime in this studio for our live recordings, check out the link in the show notes for up-to-date info on guests, dates, and opportunities. We'd love to have you. Hey, we'll be back before you know it. Appreciate you. Talk to you soon.